the pain like.
Hey guys, dearyoongi here, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be diving into what I'm calling diversion tactics within the K-pop world. So we're going to be exploring what exactly this concept is and why K-pop uses it, as well as some examples and things to perhaps look out for to help spot when these are within the industry or wider, trying to distract us from something. So without further ado, let's get started by first explaining what exactly diversion tactics are and why K-pop uses them. I'm sure we're all familiar with the word distraction and what that means, but let's just quickly discuss that as it's a major part of this. The Oxford Dictionary defines distraction as a thing that takes your attention away from what you are doing or thinking about. Synonyms for this word are things like diversion, interruption, and interference. Diversion tactics are a very similar idea. It is something intended to attract people's attention away from something which you do not want them to know about or think about in too much detail. This diversion or distraction is dragged out for however long the creator feels necessary. Once they are content that it has fulfilled its purpose and attention has successfully been driven away from the original topic, you'll usually see people just stop talking about whatever the diversion was. Why would the K-pop industry be so eager to use these? If there is something circling in the press that could potentially cast a negative shadow over a company or artist, a distraction or diversion tactics can help keep the spotlight off anything that might make them look bad. This then means the person, party, or action they're trying to divert attention away from can kind of be brushed under the rug, and they can subsequently avoid taking responsibility for their actions, addressing something difficult, and or handling negative exposure. The most common type of diversion tactics we see within the K-pop industry involve creating another story that would grasp a viewer's attention to distract them from the original topic they don't want to discuss. There are so many examples of this within the K-pop world or Korean entertainment industry as a whole, so let's take a look at some of these. For legal reasons, I do feel the need to clarify before we start that there is of course no concrete evidence that any of the stories I'm going to talk about were created with the sole purpose of diverting the public's attention away from another ongoing issue. These just so happen to be stories that took place around a similar time to something else, which people could feel have been more than just a coincidence. Okay, I can't afford a liar right now. If you have been following K-pop social media recently, then you'll be familiar with the one I've chosen to start with, YG Leaker. Surprise leaks are people claiming to be industry insiders who have gossip to share that none of us previously knew, and not a rare occurrence in K-pop. Because so much of what the industry does behind the scenes can often feel like a mystery, it's become quite a normal occurrence that every few years a new random anonymous account will appear on social media claiming to know secrets about our favourite groups. And I would say people fall for it mostly every time, because why wouldn't you? Well, this is pretty much what happened with YG Leaker. In the late hours of the 30th of March, a random Discord appeared with the name of YG Leaker, with a picture of Yang Hyun-suk, YG's founder, as its icon. This user claimed to have a database full of information on a multitude of K-pop companies, from YG Entertainment to SM Entertainment to JYP to Cube, etc. They claimed to have hundreds of terabytes of data featuring things like unreleased dance practices and music videos, unreleased songs and demos, and things that companies may not want to reveal to the public, such as information about who's dating who, idols' private lives, etc. Very early on, people had their doubts about YG Leaker from the get-go, for a multitude of reasons, and the sheer amount of data they claim to have is one of them. I don't know how I can express exactly how much data a terabyte is. A lot of us may be more familiar with megabytes or gigabytes. In my research, I don't know if this is true, IT people, please help me out here. I found that a 1080p HD movie with 60 frames per second, bear in mind 30 is more common, at 2 hours long, can be an average of around 6 gigabytes in file size. There's supposed to be 1000 gigabytes in 1 terabyte. Let's do some maths. This would mean that 1 terabyte can hold 166 2-hour-long movies. That's in just 1 terabyte, and this person is claiming to have over 400 of these terabytes in 3-minute music videos and songs and dance dance practices. I'm sorry, they could prove me wrong, sure, go for it. But personally, I just think there is no way that is possible. Other issues with this person's validity included the fact they spoke mostly in English, even though they claimed to be an insider, and they also seemed well versed with the way fans speak on social media, how people address idols as names, and the way they talk about things such as payola. So what is the one way a self-proclaimed insider can make themselves appear more believable? You of course have to provide evidence. So YG Leaker did share a few dance practices of early Blackpink and the members they trained with who didn't make it into the group, including G-Idol's Miyeon. This person also shared some early performances of the Blackpink members, in which we heard Jennie, Rosé, and Lisa saying the N-word, so yeah, that wasn't great. After these leaks, people did of course then start to believe this person was legit, and that's when they started to make even more crazy accusations when they had people on side, crossing further lines of privacy by claiming to know about idols' sexuality and secret relationships. Now you may be wondering, why are we talking about this YG Leaker? Well, in completely unrelated news, Korean actor Kim Soo-hyun had earlier revealed that he would be holding an emergency press conference at 4:30 p.m. Korean time on the 31st of March to discuss ongoing accusations he had been receiving about his involvement with the late Kim Se-ran while she was still just a minor. For the past few weeks, text message conversations between the two of them and photos from their time together when she was still very young have been getting leaked continuously across social media, pretty much confirming that they had a long-term relationship while she was still like 15, 16 years old and he was in his late 20s. Now walk with me for a sec. It's no surprise that YG Leaker's presence got a lot of people talking across social media, right? But a lot of YG Leaker's reveals had been coming out the night before, where people were either getting ready to sleep or would likely not be seeing a majority of the fallout until the next morning. Therefore, a lot of people's timelines were of course going to be flooded with people discussing this and nothing else when they next go on social media. 4:30 p.m. Korean time at the time of Soo-hyun's press conference would still be the very early hours of the morning for a lot of the Western world. So when people were waking up, they wouldn't be searching anything on social media, regardless of if it's his press conference or not, because they'll be so distracted by all the exciting K-pop leaks on their timeline. And that's not just regular people like fans, but also news companies themselves who are looking for things to write about. But they have multiple areas of ground covered here too, because if anyone was to look up Kim Soo-hyun and Kim Se-ran to try and discover their connection while she was still a minor, they've got that covered, because what label was Kim Se-ran signed to while she was a minor in 2016? You guessed it, YG Entertainment. And what better way to distract from all the leaks of their relationship that have been flying around the K-pop world, because the search results would now facilitate new K-pop leaks. Now, like we said, this is all just theory. We will never know for certain if the YG Leaker was created with the pure intention of causing a distraction to get people to not pay any attention to Soo-hyun or his press conference. We don't even know who this anonymous person is, but you can't deny that there is a serious coincidence between the timing of the press conference, the timing of YG Leaker having content about popular groups that will get lots of attention, and even the inclusion of a name that may come up in people's search and search terms. Things like YG Entertainment, things like leaks, K-pop. It reads like a textbook diversion. This specific story is actually my inspiration for making this video. I was initially going to do a video just on that story, but then I was so pleasantly surprised to see so many people who seem to see more than just a simple coincidence between this dropping on social media just hours before Kim Soo-hyun was due to hold a press conference. Also talking about leaks. There are, of course, so many other examples of potential diversions in the K-pop world in the past, where people believed that a story only came to light in the press to distract from something else. We went into so much detail about YG Leaker, so let's just list these because I'd like to provide as many examples as I can think of. And hey, some of these might not always have been a bad thing, and labels might just want to steer fans away from focusing too much on something that might be negative to focus on something more positive to discuss. In 2014, when news first broke about EXO's Baekhyun and Girls' Generation's Taeyeon dating, SM quickly announced that SHINee's Taemin would be debuting as a soloist. I believe SM confirmed Baekhyun Baekhyun and Taeyeon were dating in like June-ish, and didn't share news of Taemin's solo debut until July. But I would also like to note that when both parties involved are members of such huge groups like EXO and Girls' Generation, of course the pair were going to receive a lot of backlash for their relationships, both parties from the other side's fans. Therefore, a lot of people did feel as though the label sort of perhaps waited it out to see how the public were responding to the news, and when they realised the response was rather negative, actions were then taken elsewhere to shift attention away from EXO, Girls' Generation, any dating controversy, to get everyone to look somewhere else, towards another big SM artist and something that fans actually wanted. In the early months of 2019, when the details of the Burning Sun scandal began to surface, Big Bang's Seungri assured people his involvement was minimal. This was very quickly proven to not be the case when things started majorly kicking off in February and March of 2019. On the 17th of March 2019, YG Entertainment announced Blackpink's plans to come back, so all attention on the company and any YG searches were at them and not him. When the BTS military enlistment discussions became more intense and closer than fans would have liked, HYBE revealed new solo projects for every member as the time went on, to put fans' minds at ease that they wouldn't feel like they were never having BTS for so long. I thought this one was smart personally, because the whole time that they were enlisting, it always felt like there was content. Within weeks of Cube Entertainment confirming that Pentagon's E'Dawn, now Dawn, and 4 Minutes Hyunho were dating, Cube's newest girl group at the time, G-Idol, came back with their song Han. Sure, this could have been prepared for months as a comeback sometime already, but definitely an interesting time to start teasing a comeback, right? Okay, you guys get the point, and I'd love to know if you guys have thought of any other potential diversions in K-pop. Drop them down in the comments if so. Remember, these are all just speculations and potential coincidences. None of us are trying to get sued here. This is a safe space, I promise. If you haven't been able to think of any of your own, or are worried about being able to potentially spot these in the future, let's discuss some potential red flags that you can look out for to help see if something is really worth your time and attention. We'll start with the biggie, and that is of course the timing of the news. This is the key thing to look out for, because without the need for something to cover up, diversions or distractions wouldn't exist, or may feature projects that we weren't actually due to see for some time, or that maybe would have even stayed in the drafts forever for all we know. If you see a sudden and shocking news story or announcement for something that seems to have come out of nowhere, take a second to consider what else appears to be going on in the K-pop world at that time, and if there is any way in which the news and shocking sudden story could be the perfect thing to create a distraction from something else. Did quarterly reports or investor talks just happen? I know a lot of K-pop fans perhaps don't look into the business side of K-pop, but I promise you it's so interesting, and if you do ever get a chance to look into it, please do, because it does of course influence a lot of the things that happened around us in the industry. Next question I would consider is, what is the purpose of sharing this story? This is tough because we might not always be able to decipher this, but just think, if a sudden news story has taken over your timeline at the same time as other big K-pop stories are breaking, what does this new story achieve from being in the media now, or at the same time? If the aim of a story is to expose some awful actions an idol did, then the purpose of the story is to raise awareness, so fans know not to support this person and to help the victim get justice. Simple. But if a story is suddenly breaking out of nowhere from an anonymous source, claiming to know how many people Le Seraphim kiss at parties, yes, that is inspired by the 1-800-HOT and FUN lyrics, then what exactly does OP get out of sharing that information? In the YG leaker example, what exactly does this supposed insider get from randomly sharing some dance practices now, if not to distract from something else? Another red flag to look out for is when things just don't seem to add up, or there's a lack of sources. By this I mean if the news story seems like a major thing to just randomly come out of the blue, or seems hugely disproportionate or from a totally vague origin that no one can trace for legitimacy. Again, an example from YG Leaker. It's an anonymous source that no one can track or decipher the origin of, claiming to have 400 terabytes of data that they've just been sitting on for 10 years and have decided to leak on a random Sunday night. Can someone do a red flag counter for me? Something else I think is really interesting to look out for is a sudden uncharacteristic transparency from a label. We all know K-pop companies can be quite secretive, like 90% of the time. So if a company suddenly decides to offset a scandal such as somebody wanting to terminate their contract due to mistreatment by suddenly revealing that a duo of idols are now dating, that would immediately raise red flags with me. Because why would a company do that when usually the latter news is exactly the sort of things companies are creating diversions to avoid talking about? Why would they suddenly decide that it is in fact fine to share dating news with us, if not covering up something else? Another red flag flag to keep your eye out for is any abnormalities or inconsistency in what would have been a pattern otherwise. This one is a little bit more difficult again, but it is doable if you're as into this whole K-pop thing as a lot of us are. We all get quite used to the way companies work in terms of the types of things they consider news, frequency of artist comebacks, how these look in terms of teasers, comeback schedules, and additional content we receive. But if a company suddenly starts to push a minor or random achievement in a way they never used to, or suddenly starts sharing random content they never did in the past, such as behind the scenes stuff or extras, it could be totally harmless, and I'd like to think it's just the label wanting to share something different with fans. But it also wouldn't hurt to just take a second to think, now why are they suddenly doing that? Why is that artist suddenly coming back already when they came back a couple of months ago? That sort of thing. Okay, conclusion time. Although we'll probably never be able to prove it for certain, it does appear as though diversion tactics are used quite commonly in K-pop. I'm not trying to suck all the fun out of everything and telling you to question everything, I swear. Like I touched upon very briefly earlier, these don't always have to be a negative thing or be portrayed as the companies trying to be sneaky or hide things from us. Diverting the consumer's attention away from something you don't want them to focus too much on, in place of something you'd rather them spend more time looking at, is a pretty normal thing in business, and doesn't make K-pop labels any more toxic or secretive than other businesses. Because of this, we'll probably continue to see what may appear to be these styles of distractions in K-pop in the future, and all around us outside the K-pop world. All I'm trying to say with this video is just keep an eye out for these sorts of things, but also never be afraid to question the legitimacy of information in front of you if there are clear red flags waving around it, as opposed to immediately believing any news without sources or thinking about the logistics first. Because when we just believe everything we read, we sometimes help random sources with no basis for their report spread senseless rumors that can really hurt an idol or their image or their group or their future, friends, family, etc. Some things in the press really could be completely innocent coincidences, because strange things happen sometimes, or they could be things we really should be talking about, and if that's the case, then that's fine. If there is something that we seriously need to discuss, such as an idol's wrongdoings, I do believe it'll very quickly come to light that it's something that deserves our attention. Otherwise, if unknown sources are making seemingly baseless claims that are doing more harm than good, I'd much rather feel silly for being skeptical of an expose that had no evidence backing it up, than jumping to conclusions just because I read something that had the shock factor people love on social media. Where did this information come from, and what is its purpose? Is the whistleblower trying to raise awareness for something serious we should be discussing, or are they trying to spread unnecessary hate to someone they don't like or invade someone's privacy? Okay guys, and that was it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching if you got this far. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic in the comments. I know it's quite a controversial one, but is it something you've spotted within the K-pop world yourself? Or be honest, is this something that you've never heard of before? I'm interested to hear from you either way. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to be the first to hear whenever I upload, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys!